the meeting of the Human Resources Committee of the Ithaca City School District School Board. And we have a working session today, and we have a pretty tight agenda, mostly talking with Zach and Gladira about how things are going in human resources. And any other discussion items that either Garrick Blaylock or Adam Krantweiss choose to bring before us. So no one is here for public comment. No public comment this evening. And are we ready to approve the minutes from the April 1st session? Yes, the minutes are approved. Thank you. I've asked Zach Lynn to go over the exit interview process, as well as any reviews that they can share with us, vacancies. We just have a whole bunch of kind of nitty gritty of personnel, human resources things going on today. So Zach, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm just connecting to the Zoom because we will be we'll be sharing a slide deck. With your permission, we've done a good deal of preparation in terms of responses to our conversation last week about modifications that we can make going forward.
Great.
So if we could, we're going to do our vacancy update. We'll go into those, and then we can discuss maybe exit interviews and things towards the end. Would that be okay?
That's fine. However you want to order it.
Great. Okay. Let me just connect. Parker, can you add me in? Or okay, we're good. All right. So just going to share it at the Zoom. Oh, just send a request to share. I think we can. Okay. All right. So first, we'll just get started with a quick review of our vacancies. So, Gladira.
Yes, good evening. So here's a list of all of our vacancies divided by the instructional, non-instructional, administrative. You'll see that we are currently recruiting for special education teachers, both elementary, secondary, mathematics teachers, ENL, library media specialists, school psychologists, reading teachers, physical education teachers, health teachers, and also a Spanish teacher, also called world language teacher. And non-instructional, we have bus drivers, bus trainees, bus aides, teacher aides, teaching assistants, food service courier, custodial workers, library clerk, and senior account clerk typists. And for administrative positions, director of special education, secondary principal, elementary principal, associate principal. I also want to mention that we are, for some of these vacancies, we are in the process of either screening applications or interviewing candidates.
And I'll add for instructional vacancies, these are all applying to next year. There's a small handful of vacancies that we're looking to fill immediately, but for the most part, we're looking at the 25-26 school year. And in our next couple of board reports, you'll start seeing hires for next year as well. So we've had hires there. Just anecdotally, the hardest areas in terms of recruiting that we're seeing so far are mathematics teachers, special education teachers. Those are probably the two biggest, if you look at the difference between our need and the number of candidates.
How many school psychologists are we down now?
Oh, I had this the other day. I think we're contracting out with 2 or 3 school psychologists, like for services. So I'd say that's what we're looking at right now.
Do you anticipate, this is probably too early to ask this, but are you getting applications for those positions?
Yeah. So we tend to get, there's some normal attrition, right? You might lose a person or two in that, in those in those sort of specialization areas, and then we will bring on a person or two. So you have some mild turnover, nothing huge though.
I was thinking, this happens to be an area I know something about as a
Yes.
retired school psychologist, and there are different models of delivering school psychology services. Years ago, when I worked in Topeka, Kansas, we had a different model. And maybe we should explore that at some point.
Yeah, I think that, we certainly could. We could bring, we will have a new director of special education ideally next year. That could certainly be a topic of models to support special education staffing, in an era when those are hard. Special education, speech, social work, psychology, they're all sort of hard areas, particularly because some of those are competing with the private sector, right? So for some psychologists, they have options in the private sector.
Unlike teachers, for the most part.
For the most part, right?
most part,
We don't have a ton of private schools. I mean, now with remote maybe, but like it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing, how many retirees, people who plan to retire this year at this point? Do you have a number on that?
We have a spreadsheet, so Gladira will look that up,
Okay,
but it's
great.
not a huge number
We had a big
that we had. Yeah, we had a,
bulge last year and the year before, I think, but
yeah.
just curious.
Yeah, I'm not going to guess.
Okay, that's
but
fine.
we'll look it up here and shout it out when we see it here in a minute or two. Any other questions on vacancies?
Thank you.
Great. So I'll just preface this, and then Gladira is going to take us through a deep dive. But we had a really, honestly, a very enjoyable and robust conversation last month in HR committee about some of our practices and how they relate to recruitment and potentially retention of candidates. Specifically, we discussed everything from the onboarding process, the interview process, the chairing process, and sort of all the dynamics that come into play in the ways where we may or may not limit the entrance of folks in our communities. And so we took the board feedback, and what we've come up with is a series of ways that we're hoping we can present to you to maybe adjust some of the things we're doing and see, sort of take your pulse on it. And so I think we've done a pretty sort of comprehensive job of looking through those things. And then we haven't gotten to the, I know we were going to talk a little bit about exit interviews, but we can do the same thing with exit interviews as well, and sort of like have a discussion, and then we can come back in a later month and provide feedback. Just a couple of reminders. In, I want to say 2011, then again in 2019, there was a lot of work done by community groups and human resources in the district to come up with sort of a whole structure for our onboarding, hiring, recruitment, and retention processes. And so a lot of our practices come out of that. And so our hope today is to sort of take what we have been doing, amplify the things that go well, modify with board support the things that maybe we're looking to adjust, and sort of grow from there. So with that, Gladira, did you find our retirement info?
Yeah, so for ITA right now, we have 13 retirements.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Cool. Thanks. So Gladira, I'll hand it off to you.
Okay. Great. And I missed some of what you were saying.
Oh, I did. Oh, thank you. I
so
just introduced
this slide right here.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and also just what we're trying to do. We've broken up into areas. So each area we break it up into the feedback we received, suggestions, and how we're going to modify.
Right. So starting out with accessibility, our application process. At our last conversation, there were some questions asked about how accessible is it to non-digital or non-tech savvy candidates interested in positions, looking at our current application platform and the ease of navigating through there. So we took that feedback and looked a little further into our application platform, which is Recruit Front. And also there was a conversation of the walk-in options, or how we're offering assistance to folks in completing applications. So one of the things that we have implemented that is new is on the employment opportunities page. We've gone a step further in providing assistance and making that stand out. So when you go to that first page, you'll see the need assistance and providing different options. So obviously for someone that's non-digital or not tech savvy, emailing may not be the best way. So in addition to providing the recruitment email, then we've also provided an option to call the HR office and also a link to make an appointment with an HR team member. So if you click on the make an appointment, there are several options of times that a person could then just set up an appointment and come in, and we'll walk them through completing the application.
And I'll just highlight, it is very important for a whole host of reasons that we capture their application in a digital format. So when they come in, we'll help them get into the system, create a pass, do whatever's needed. But basically we'll be the conduit if they feel like they need support. And we have staff members that are there and ready to do that.
Great.
Yes. Also, in addition to that, so all of our job vacancy announcements do now also take the step-by-step guide that is on the recruitment platform. And so we've added that to our job vacancy announcements. So there's the links, create a recruit front profile, create an application, apply to a job posting. Each of those links takes you to a video that would walk you through or walk a candidate through how to complete each of those steps.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on this?
A good ad.
Great. All right, we'll move along.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just going to talk a little bit about, I went ahead a little bit, the importance of why we're using RecruitFront and
Yes.
why we use the digital system. For anyone that doesn't know, I know we've talked about it with you all, but just for the general public that may be listening.
Yes.
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, so we've made some efforts to really streamline our processes, and the entryway to that and the recruit to hire process is the application process. RecruitFront is a portal of Schoolfront, and so Schoolfront is the system right now that we use to onboard our employees. So once an application is in, and let's say we want to offer an employee a position, then we would move to hire them through that platform. They receive an offer letter. They also receive all the documents to complete through that system, and it creates a more streamlined and a better way to track our new employees, and also to archive their employee records.
And we would also say for anyone that's applied to a job and had to onboard with physical paper, this decreases the new need for duplicate entries, right? Writing the emergency responder 3 times, the name of your doctor 3 times. So once you get it once into our system, we just apply it to the other areas. So while it can, the initial technological hurdle might be a concern for some, we have found that if we can get someone on and we dedicate the time, it solves so many errors, everything from, someone who has a really unique spelling for their name getting changed later on, like just all those things. So that's part of that system.
Yes. I also want to add that we are a one-to-one digital district. So for the most part, we do want to assist even our non-tech savvy employees. We want to be able to take that as an opportunity to educate them on how to use our systems, whether that's checking their emails. There are entering in leave requests. So this does empower our employees, because we have considered if we have a paper application, but we've seen that if we provide assistance, if we walk people through learning the system, then we are also empowering them to be able to navigate as an employee better. Okay. Adding on to our posting vacancies and looking at the application process, we think it's important to highlight our commitment to hiring culturally responsive candidates. The recruitment and retention plan, which we talked about a few meetings ago, strategy 1F does speak to the job postings and visibly showing on the job postings our commitment to hiring culturally responsive candidates. And so on our job postings, we do have the required qualifications, which you'll see there. It says the Ithaca City School District is committed to eliminating race, class, and disability as predictors of academic performance, co-curricular participation, and discipline. Qualified candidates will demonstrate a basic awareness of these commitments and a strong willingness to support these efforts. Desired characteristics, and then it also does speak to culturally responsiveness as well. And I say this as a lead up to our discussions about the writing prompts and that commitment to culturally responsive hires. So our writing sample prompts, we asked 3 questions or 3 prompts.
Oops. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. And so if you click on the first one, one of the purposes is to gauge alignment with district values. And that first question does connect with that, gauging that alignment. The first question, ICSD has a diverse student population representing a variety of races, gender identities, learning needs, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, languages, national origins, etc. And so we asked in that first writing prompt to describe your teaching strategies and or experiences for effectively educating students from diverse backgrounds. Please give specific examples of how you respond effectively to students who have a variety of identities or respond effectively to students who are different from your own identity. How do you ensure success for every student? And then if you go to, okay. And the next one, so we're looking to align also with the guidance of digital equity and access. You know, there is a gap in digital equity and access with students. And so in shortening that gap, we want to ensure that in hiring educators, that we can see, okay, how are they in this next prompt? It says Ithaca City School District is a 1-to-1 district in grades 3 to 12. Please provide examples of how you have used or your vision for using digital technology in instruction. Also, please provide evidence of how you stay current with students' digital world. And then the third,
Lydia,
oh, sorry.
Stop there for a second. Do we no longer provide devices for K through 2?
So K through 2, they're placed in the classroom. They're not like, we don't assign them specifically to students. There are 1-to-1, like there's devices, but it's not like a.
We're back to the carts.
Essentially,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
And sorry if I'm moving quickly through this. I just want to get to the other part. And so then the third part.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So then, and I really just like outlined it as like the purpose. Okay, how did we initially think? Okay, this connects in the writing sample prompt. But then the third one really serves as a tool for our equitable screening. So how are we looking at applications and reviewing these writing prompts to see to provide equitable screening? And so the third one is, tell us about any personal and professional experiences you have had that would help us to fulfill our district equity goals.
So that's an attempt to respond to the possibility that the basic questions haven't brought out someone's skills or experiences that might actually be something the district would be looking for.
Right. Someone could have a very non-traditional answer, and that would be considered good here. So
yes.
Did we, let's see. Yeah, here.
Yep. So in an effort to provide whether it's changes or really to think about the feedback that we received at the last HR committee, which was, writing prompts may cause stress. it may add to a candidate's anxiety when they're applying, may deter otherwise qualified applicants. And there was a suggestion of maybe we have a choice of prompts to reduce applicant pressure. And so we prepared choice of prompts, or an example of choices of prompts. Some just have one, but this is just an example of that can be added to provide choices of prompts. And an applicant could then choose to complete one question from each of the following categories. Obviously, you'll see personal and professional equity contribution need some more choices, but again, just providing a sample.
So the idea here is that we know with our students when we're in our classroom, like if there's only one answer and they think there's only one correct answer, that can cause stress and anxiety. So the thought here would be, can we give folks some choices or options so they can choose the response or essay prompt response that works best for them?
And again, the writing samples are just for teachers, or are they for all?
So there is, we have a writing sample for instructional and a different writing sample for administrative. Well, right here was this, these questions are for teachers.
But we don't, but if, you know, if there's a bus driver candidate, we're not asking for a writing sample along
Right,
these lines.
Right.
No.
I think this is a great step forward. Something that's concerned me for some time. So I'm sure people will have specific thoughts about it. I don't know if they can come up with them right now or not, but I really
Yeah.
appreciate your responsiveness to our concerns. It's nice to see that. Garrett, did you want to say something, or are you just still pondering?
I like the choice. I guess I'm still bothered. We use the term writing sample.
Yeah.
That bothers me. I mean, people apply for a job, at least every job I've applied for, I've included a cover letter. In the cover letter, I've tried to say why I was qualified. So I'm just wondering, there's something, I mean, the information we're asking here, we couldn't just prompt candidates to include in their cover letter. Which seems like a more natural, normal thing to do. Like, if we like candidates that have these characteristics. You know, in addition to your CV, please let us know in the cover letter how you, in any part of your background that would qualify you for these characteristics that we like to see in candidates. I think the reason is, to me, like a writing sample is like, it's like a, you know, AP English test or something. It just struck me as really odd.
Like we're going to be
Sometimes
grading
it's
your
gonna
writing.
be, like an English committee was going to evaluate the use of prepositions or tenses matched. But maybe that's just me. I mean, just writing samples just seems like always struck me as an odd thing to have in a job application, unless you're hiring someone to be like a writing tutor or
Sure.
writing instructor or something.
We could also, so in, as we build an application and recruit fund, we can just include it as questions and not have, you know, have it indicated as a writing sample, just include questions.
But
I mean, that's
yeah,
me.
I mean, I would also say having, you know, I look at a lot of applications every day, and I both like the idea of a cover letter that does this, and then I also dislike, because sometimes but I think a well-phrased prompt that says something like, please provide a one-page cover letter, because sometimes you get like 4 pages and that can get a little bit onerous, that, you know, addresses these ideas would be, at least would let us know if the candidate's paying attention to those details, which is sometimes also really helpful. So it's certainly something we could come back and talk more about.
Phrase it. I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing I guess that maybe not thinking about it is when I hear the term writing sample. Like when I've been asked for writing sample, like I go to one of my published papers.
Yeah.
Here's a sample of something I wrote.
Huh.
That's
Like, I
fair.
don't think that writing sample is meant to be like something that I write for the question being asked. It's like, oh, here's something I wrote in the past as an example of my writing skill.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm good with all this. I just don't know the word sample.
Got it. All right.
Okay,
I think we could come up with a response to that.
When do they, like in the process, where are people submitting this sample anyway? I mean, are they doing this at home and bringing it in, or is this like go into this room and answer this question?
Oh, it goes into the application. So like to submit your application, it would be a required field.
So you write this at home and then you.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you turn-
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it because I've been around here long enough that we've been doing them, that it just became part of the landscape. But I think that's a good point. A writing sample implies that someone's going to be evaluating your writing,
Mhm.
which is a concern for a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
Thank you.
Do most people have cover letters when they send?
Most instructional applicants do.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I know you have vacancies
Yeah.
and I went to such and such a college, that sort of.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Maybe this is a little too inside or behind the curtain, but for me, like when you get a big packet, you're often going to go first to the resume, right? Because it's going to tell you the context, and then to these other pieces, because sometimes those pieces, like if you start reading a cover letter, you read like, you know, when I worked in X, Y, and Z building, and then you're like, wait, when was this? What? So then you're going to go back to the resume. So just if anyone's listening, I'm a big fan of the resume. A really good 1-page resume.
Yeah.
Or 1.5, depending on your career. So.
Okay.
I know it's just a modern, part of the times now, but it's kind of like, especially bringing AI into this. I mean, if somebody's applying and they get a question, it's very easy to produce a writing sample. I mean, I'm just sort of wondering, how, over time, if that becomes the best, the best methodologies, it's like, anybody could just say, hey, write this for me, or just type it in AI and say, this is the question, give me a response.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like, okay, so do something about that. I'm just kind of raising it as a point that as times progress, it gets a little less relevant since anybody could just produce something.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a concern. And I think, maybe that's again a future topic is if we don't know that the writing sample is going to capture that anymore, because one, it's become antiquated, and two, it's so easy to sort of produce a quality writing sample. Like it's not going to tell us as much about a candidate, then are there other ways we can get to that? So that could certainly, it's worth a discussion for sure.
Right. Like what other criteria might be considered that isn't that?
Yeah.
Think in this very moment, I mean, I could brainstorm a few things.
Or maybe it's this, whatever we choose to call it in the future.
Yeah.
Doesn't come in the application process,
Right.
given our relative paucity
Perhaps,
of
yeah.
applicants at this point, that it comes later. Just before the interview or just after the
in
interview.
a room,
Yeah.
like
Right, we've
leave
got,
your phone at the door.
when we've got them.
Here's a pad of paper.
Yeah. I mean, there's also, if there's concerns about folks accessing AI for answers, which let's be honest, that's a fair concern. Maybe it doesn't need to be in that same medium, right? Like maybe it can be a verbal response. Maybe it's, or maybe there's, we ask for an artifact that shows it from their work, or, other thing that explains.
Dance performance for.
Hey,
Okay, that's probably going.
no, you want to send us the video and upload it and explain why? Maybe that's appropriate. I don't know, but let's talk more about it going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way this is headed, but I wonder if we've got it in the wrong place, because if somebody's making applications of 6 school districts over a long weekend.
Yeah.
One that requires more is not necessarily going to be
Yeah.
appealing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue to some changes we're considering for the interview process and how do we further assess candidates' qualifications. So currently our interview process, we have prepared interview questions, and there are no follow-ups during the candidate interview process. And so we heard your feedback. Thank you. So why no follow-ups? Is it a cold interview process? We've gotten that feedback also from some candidates. Not effective in identifying candidates and move forward. So as we're debriefing, like, okay, there's some pockets of unknown information because maybe they didn't answer the question fully. may deter interested applicants, right? If there's a cold process, or did they really care what I said? So there were some suggestions, right? Could we provide training to allow for follow-ups, or, maybe structured follow-ups? And so we have some suggestions on that. So having a similar to our structured interview question process, having a standardized follow-up question. And it could be in these categories, right? Clarification-based questions, contextualizing questions, reflection-based questions, culturally responsive practice follow-ups. And it would be where, at this point, I was hesitant of follow-ups, because we do let candidates know, hey, we don't ask follow-ups. It's not that we're not interested. It's just that we want to ensure the same experience. And I think with allowing follow-ups, if it can do that, where we're, making sure that there is not going to be any unlawful inquiries during the interview process, and training our chairperson to be the one, that may be the more immediate and effective way that we could implement that, and using these follow-up question banks.
So in practice, this would mean if I'm chairing an interview and Garrick's responding and he doesn't tell us, all the steps. We might tell us about a challenge that was really difficult. And he might say, like one time I had to, do this project, it was hard. And I know later when we sit in committee, we're going to be like, can you tell us the steps that you took to work through that? Because we're all going to want to know. So that's where our, under clarification-based questions, the chair would then be trained to be like, listen to the question response, and are they fully clarifying themselves? And if it's, if it's apparent that they're not, you are then, you're able to ask that follow-up. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? So that will allow us to be sure that they can, give the candidates the best possible chance to demonstrate their understandings and learnings, and the chair can then interject here and there.
This strikes me as we might take a page from our ongoing negotiations and allow other committee members to pass a note to the chair saying they would like a follow, rather than themselves asking a follow-up. That
Right.
if someone else feels something is lacking,
yeah.
that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think that could be appropriate. The key part here is the chair. If the chair is going to engage in follow-up questions, they have to be, and we're committed to doing this because we do it anyway, but they're going to have to be very judicious in how they execute those follow-up questions. You can't just ask everyone every single follow-up question, right? Because it can get a really long process. So you just have to be and you have to really base it on what is it that the person's saying. And so I also do like that suggestion of committee members asking for that through a note or something.
I know Sean and Dr. Brown both have strong feelings about this area, so I'll look forward to their
Sure.
feedback when we talk about it again. But I like the way you're headed.
Yeah. There's a couple more things on the guidance for use just to add on this.
Yes. So we want to make sure that, again, we are still maintaining the structure of the interview process, and ensuring that it is a fair and consistent process for each candidate. So we would, in the training of chairpersons, provide guidance to limit follow-ups to 1 to 2 follow-ups per candidate. And then only chairperson may ask follow-up questions. I appreciate the suggestion of allowing stakeholders to pass notes. I think looking into that more to not create like an uncomfortable situation for candidates where it's like, oh, they were passing notes. So, but it's something to think about. Always select from the approved question bank for chairpersons, and avoid questions related to personal identity, health, family status, or protected categories, which would be included in a training.
How many chair people are trained at this point to do these interviews? Is it just you and Ladera or?
So most of our district administrators will chair interviews during hiring season, which is now. Gladira and I are often chairing many interviews because our, principals and leaders are often out doing lots of supporting field trips and lunches and observing teachers. So, so we're doing a lot of it, but there's definitely administrators that are doing it along with us.
Okay.
Yeah, so I realized my mic wasn't off earlier, so nuggets of wisdom in my earlier comments are gonna go unheard by the public. I'm so sorry for the. Oh, you're picking it all up. Oh, okay. Oh, well, but now that I've called it wisdom, right? People can
The community.
People can
rest
hear-
assured.
people can hear it wasn't, but I like the ambiguity of the comments being anyway. I think this is all great. So just a couple things kind of working back. I'm realizing now that I haven't, maybe I should apply for a job at ICSD just to kind of go through the whole thing, but kind of working backwards. If it doesn't say so, I think we should just in the instructions say, like, please let us know in the cover letter if there's, any additional information about your application that you would like us to know. I mean, that seems like kind of obvious to me, like that someone, but maybe.
Like a unique experience or some particular special reason why we should consider you.
Yeah, just because sometimes there are, I mean, I always go to the resume first. It's always what I look at, but occasionally there are things that you can't really put on the resume, like my spouse just got hired at Cornell and or I'm going to take this one class I need for the certification, but
Right.
like sometimes these things are just a little harder to put on a resume.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So maybe just direct them to put that on the cover. If it's not, I like the questions or the clarification questions. I like Jill's idea of passing the notes. And the only other thing I'd add to that is if it's not on there already, maybe a standard question to end of interview with, and it may be already there, is there anything else you would like us to know about your application?
Yeah.
Is that
Well, during the interviews, we have a standard question at the end that says, please share anything else, but we could add that into the general application as well for these.
I mean, it's a good kind of catch-all.
Yeah.
So, because again, candidates are nervous and apprehensive. They may feel, well, they didn't ask me about my PhD that I'm about to earn, so I'm not going to tell them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it sounds silly, but I think just kind of giving them a catch-all open question.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I think on Jill's idea about passing the notes, I mean, you can just, any apprehension, but you could just say at the beginning of the interview, committee members may pass questions to the chair. Don't be don't be bothered if that happens. That's our normal practice. And then I think that would.
Yeah.
So just sort of, so when I chair, I always sort of explain the process. So we could say, the chair asks follow-up questions. So you may see committee members pass a note along requesting a follow-up question on an item. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, I think this is all like, I guess I'm just to conclude, I think we kind of gave you a challenge last couple of meetings, and I think this is a really good kind of even-keeled response to that challenge that I think protects the concern people have about bias in interview process, but at the same time allows the kind of flexibility I think we're looking for. So this is a nice balance in my view.
Great.
I agree, and I appreciate the responsiveness and.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice.
Oh, we did have one thing, but we talked about this, about follow-up questions and some of the sticky wickets, so to speak, that you can get into. So we're just giving you the guardrails around basically not wanting to get us into situations where we're asking, even not like, hey, can you tell me more about that? Or can you tell me more about, like, let's say someone talked about their divorce, right? Asking a follow-up question, even though if it's on our list, you're like, can you tell us a little bit more? Probably not. So just know that those are some of the frameworks that need to go around that. So just for legal reasons.
This brings to mind, years ago, I had a friend in graduate school who almost didn't get to graduate school because he was a bit older and he'd been a sheep rancher in Montana for 10 or 12 years before he decided to go back to school. But somehow that never came out and no one asked him what had happened. They felt that they
Right.
shouldn't ask him what that 10-year gap in his academic experience was. And they were imagining all sorts of less
Right.
savory things. And that's what we don't want to miss. We don't want to miss a well-qualified person who, for whatever reason, hasn't brought forth some information that we'd actually welcome. So thank you.
Yeah, and just for summary, Lydia, do you want to?
Yes, so and taking all your feedback. And again, thank you, because it allowed us to really think and do a deep dive into our process. So, incorporating, having a process in place to support non-digital, non-tech savvy candidates with our application process. I'll add to that also, we've been offering internal job fairs. We have one coming up May 28th. And during that, we will also just provide in-person application. They can apply right there, and we would provide them with assistance. Providing choice of prompts to reduce stress, encourage more authentic, diverse responses, and allow for insight into cultural competency. We do, starting with, tell us about yourself. So in terms of interview questions, always starting with, tell us about yourself and why should you be considered for this position? And end with, is there anything else you would like to share? Yep.
Yeah.
And allow for a structured use of follow-up questions for trained chairperson. So with that, a rollout of a new chairperson training that incorporates guidance on asking follow-up questions.
Great.
Great.
Yep.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that's that part. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about exit interviews, and it, I think we could kind of go along the same routes. What is it that we hope to accomplish? What's everyone thinking? But I don't want to jump ahead or presume, Jill. So
Yeah.
know.
I'm trying to keep time in mind here as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what the issues, I think the purpose of looking into the exit interview process was not everyone gets one. I guess everyone is offered one, but not
Yeah.
everyone gets one. And
Well, it was prompted by, I think there was a community question about what data we have about exit interviews. And
Right.
can we look at that and pick up trends and, sort of analyze what people are saying on the way out? And then that kind of led to a conversation as well. Not everybody has an exit interview, or we don't
Yeah.
always look at that. So then we were kind of saying as
Yeah.
a board, or as a committee, maybe we could talk more about that,
right.
just to review.
So at this point, do you have a rough idea of how many people provide answers to an exit interview, or?
It varies year to year on, which, on the exit interviews that we receive. So I don't have a number. We will get some mailed into us. We also have a few people that will actually request, because there is an option to schedule an exit interview in person.
Right.
So we'll have a few people every year that request to have an in-person exit interview.
Are those always with their immediate supervisor, or are they with someone from HR?
With someone from HR.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
usually they'll specify, like, I want to meet with Bob, or I've had
Usually
people
Bob.
meet with myself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's usually Bob.
He's very popular. Yeah. Okay, so I think, to be blunt, another place where this is coming from is there's a sense that people are leaving to go to other districts where they make more money. And I don't have any knowledge of whether that's true or not. My suspicion is that that's a fairly low percentage of people, but we can't answer that as a question at this point, I believe.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, we certainly could ask more targeted questions. Again, not opposed to refining a system, having again, exit interviews are largely going to be voluntary. I mean, you can't, once someone's exited employment, it's pretty hard to get them in, or even right before. Things, if we're just throwing out ideas for brainstorming as a work session, you probably could ask them to at least do some sort of brief survey upon return of their keys, badge, and device, and before their final paycheck type thing. Then you'd probably increase your number from, realistically well under 50% to a higher number. I'm ballparking that. I don't have the data on that, because it's not been a huge part of our practice. But so I guess my question it would be like, what is it that we hope to accomplish, right? And then we know that with exit interviews and surveys, I was at a conference the other day, and they gave me like a 5-question multiple choice. Boom, I can do that. But
Right.
when I get those like write a paragraph on 3, usually I'm like, come on, you should have just asked me before I left. So it gets tricky. But it's also logistically not to have we can't always have a verbal conversation with everyone. So my first thought is like, could we give folks a really brief survey that would capture the most essential pieces of information? And if so, what are those data points that the board would want us to focus upon?
I do think that could be done, and I think it would be less challenging for people who either are stressed because they're leaving or they're mad about something.
Sure, yeah.
And if you're mad about something, the last thing you want to do is sit down with somebody or write paragraphs about it, usually. Some
Or it's the
people like
first
to
thing.
do-
We've seen both.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But lots of people just want to walk away.
yeah.
And I think we want to know why somebody's walking away if they are. And so, we could include in the survey a question like, are you leaving to work in another district? If so, for geographical reasons,
Sure. Okay.
more money, whatever.
So motivations, maybe a multiple choice question about
Yeah.
reason for exit, and then motivations, and then probably a question around like, would you be interested in returning to Ithaca City School District if given the opportunity, something like that in the future?
That reminds me of those questions about, would you recommend this to a friend?
Yeah.
It's sort of,
Well, or maybe like under what circumstances would you return to ICSD?
yes.
Yeah.
And they could say, if you paid me more, if you, XYZ.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but if we came up, in other ways, if we came up with, the top 10 reasons, why
Yeah.
people left, and we could say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much did this influence your decision to leave, money, location, you could just come up with,
Yeah.
10 things and they could rate them.
And the hope of this would be that we would develop data over time about retention, right?
Well,
I'm just
yeah.
wanting to make sure we're
Well,
all,
Exactly.
I don't disagree though.
It would point to the source of
Yeah.
the negative or the rationale for why teacher turnover
Yeah.
exists, and then we can potentially address
Yeah.
that problem if
Yeah.
we know why.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We're happy to workshop a couple different, I'm hearing sort of general thoughts around a short survey. I'm thinking like the 5 multiple choice question type things, maybe a short response, but because I know technologically we could build that into our, like we get a resignation, we could probably build it in ahead of like, boom, like, oh, you're resigning or you're leaving, and it goes out to them in conjunction with things. So we have some workflow points where we could probably send out some sort of surveys that wouldn't be too hard, and then just collect that data over time.
And then we might want to, collaborate with the ITA, because I think they have a lot of information. I don't know if this is true, but do they get information about why teachers are leaving that might not come across to you? And maybe they have a sense of, well, we have our finger on the pulse of the reasons
I don't think they
why.
have anything systematic, but it would be interesting.
Here, like, we want to put some factors out there,
Yeah.
that you're curious about.
Well, yeah,
Sure.
I'd like to know, ultimately, I'd like to know each year how many of the people are leaving because they're retiring.
Right.
Mhm.
They've put in their time and they're
Right.
tired and they're done. How many people are moving closer to where their family is? There are reasons why quite a few reasons why people leave.
So a goal and an ask on the board side might be something like, for when the next school year begins, we could have a data set that speaks to that, as much as there's no perfect data set, right? But there's speaks as much as it can to the exits from the previous year. So, September, October, pull that together and you could see last year, 5% retired, 20% left the profession, 30% moved to other districts out of state, whatever it is.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, we can work on some stuff.
That's what I would want, is that,
Yeah, so, I mean, I think social science research can say something on this, right? So obviously, people who are leaving can't be required to do anything, right? And so we're gonna have an enormous sample selection bias. Hard to know what directions go, but it's gonna be enormous. People who are maybe angry, would want to voice their anger, or alternatively would say, I'm not gonna spend another minute on this awful district. I mean, it's hard to know which way it would go, but you can imagine anger or happiness or people's reason for all kinds of things affecting who would take a survey. So what you'd ideally want is, 100% participation. And I think the way you get 100% participation is pay people. You come and you hand in your ID card and you're going to take a short 15-minute exit interview. We're going to pay you $300 for that, or whatever the number
Yeah.
is. But it should, if it was significant enough that people wanted the $300, whatever it
Yeah.
is, then you would get, I think, pretty much close. You would, assuming the number is high enough, I think you would get close to 100% participation. And I think, the data could be worth it. The way I would do it is not give people a survey. I would just have an open-ended interview, but have the interviewer be trained on how to code their responses. So people come down and they're going to be angry about this or happy about this, and they're going to tell you. But I think then the person doing the interview after the fact could code like the reasons for leaving into one of 5 categories or something like that. But I would just let people vent or celebrate or whatever it is they're going to do, and then have the same person trained to kind of then codify the responses into whatever categories we think we want to build. And to me, that data would be worth buying. I mean, we sat here, well, I didn't sit there, I sat there, but in some of the contract negotiations, this issue's come up repeatedly where there's disagreements about why people are leaving. And it would really be valuable to have a, close to 100% participation rate with codified responses.
I'm wondering if you could tie survey completion to like payouts, right? So when someone leaves, they'll get, a certain amount of money for their time that they spent, like,
or just a step in that process. I mean, when you're
Yeah.
leaving, you sign various things to get the money for sick days you didn't use,
exactly. That's
for
what I mean.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could develop, all right. So those,
Something like that.
so we're hearing some suggestions about a survey possibility. I think it would be worth pursuing multiple options. What you're suggesting, Garrick, might take, depending how the cost and things might be a bit more,
I know.
but we can
some kind of
develop some
incentive.
ideas.
It's a good idea. I mean, it can create other biases just depending on how much you're paying. Because if it's a medium amount of money, then
Right.
it's going to create biases against people. Say, I don't need the $72. Forget it. I mean, if it's $1,000, of course, people would
Yeah.
Probably
probably
have 100% participation rate.
right. But then that would be
But
expensive.
anyway, I mean,
We have
there might be
the,
other non-pecuniary incentives
Yeah.
as well. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not,
But
I
it's
really
a good
haven't budgeted for any of this, and that
Yeah.
it's not in the contract and so on. But
Sure.
it's,
okay.
I mean, and I'm saying the information's worth. I think to us it has value.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
does.
Okay.
It does.
Great.
Thank you for entertaining us.
Sure. Always fun.
Um, I think, unless there's something else of the discussion items that you came prepared to
No. I think
talk
we
with us
covered it.
today about, it's been requested that we go into executive session. That would be for the purpose of reviewing some tenure recommendations. So
So I move to enter into executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons.
Adam moves, and I see
Can I
Garrett
get a second?
is
Garrett?
about to second. I guess I could second. I'll second.
Okay.
And,
All in favor?
All right, all in favor, and this will effectively be the end of the Human Resources Committee meeting today. Thank you very much.